Hello, I'm Ole Norheim. I'm a researcher at BCEPS and also a professor of ethics and population at Harvard Chan School of Public Health. In this session, we will talk about theories and principles of priority setting, and this is part one. I want to start with a distinction between technical analysis, ethical analysis, and political analysis. This is a useful distinction to think about in this course, because you will learn a lot about technical analysis and political analysis, but ethical analysis is also important and it relates to these other two topics. The objective of this session is that when you have through it, you should understand the major ethical principles relevant for priority setting in health. And the readings are listed here, and I strongly recommend you to read them carefully, often two times to really understand them. The first paper is by Norman Daniels called Meeting the Challenges of Justice and Rationing. And in this paper, he talks about 4 unresolved rationing problems. And I really encourage you to think through them. They are kind of puzzles that no one have really solved. So I encourage you to try to solve at least one of these puzzles. And you will learn more about the principles that can help you in this talk. Let me start by theories in ethics. I'll talk mostly about the first two. One way of thinking of political philosophy and also political ethics, and that's relevant for ethics and priority setting, is to start with rights-based approaches, where liberalism is a useful label. And the other major approach is theories that are concerned about consequences. And the ethical theory of utilitarianism is one of many types of consequentialist ethical theories. There is also something called virtue ethics, which I recommend you to look into, but I will not talk about it here in this session. So, liberalism has this idea of that a good society gives people freedom to have the opportunity to create a good life and to make decisions over their own lives. And to ensure such opportunity, society has to respect individuals' rights. And this is about starting points. Once we guarantee this starting point, the state should not interfere into how people make use of this. So this is really a theory that focuses on the starting points and the rights of individuals, and that's why it's called a liberal theory. And there are 2 different kinds of rights, and this distinction is old, and it's good to think about it because some theories emphasize negative rights mostly. The right to make choices about how to live, like dressing, food, work, sexual behavior. This is important. And including, and this is historically important, freedom to control one's own property. This is the basic of negative rights. Other liberals also emphasize positive rights, the right to a minimum level of income, shelter, education, and health. And this has formed, I would say, a lot of the thinking and the historical development of the welfare state, for example, in the Nordic countries, that we need to make sure that everyone have access to education, to security, social security, and to health, to create equal opportunities to be free. So this idea of positive rights is about making sure that people are able to exercise their freedoms. And we can distinguish further into 2 views about rights, and what we typically used to call the libertarians in the US, for example. They focus typically on negative and political rights, including property rights. And the idea is that the state should be as small as possible, only protecting negative and political rights, and especially property rights. While liberal or egalitarian liberals, they will focus both on negative and positive rights. So for example, Norman Daniels, that you read, is an egalitarian liberal. The more focus on positive rights makes it possible to exercise freedom. That's the key message, and the link to health is, of course, we need to be healthy and live long and good lives to be able to pursue happiness, to pursue a good life, and to make choices and be citizens in democratic societies. The second theory I want to talk about is utilitarianism, and you have heard about it before, so let me just repeat the main aspects here. So, according to this theory, the goal of any act or rule or a public policy should be to improve the overall well-being of citizens. And well-being is often in utilitarianism defined as utility. In the classical variant, it was about happiness. In modern utilitarianism, it's satisfaction of preferences, what people really want. Society should seek, and this is the slogan, the greatest good of the greatest number. And that is, it means to maximize total utility. And the interesting thing and the contrast to right-based theories is that it is sometimes, according to utilitarianism, acceptable to infringe on rights or sacrifice some other values, if that is what it takes to achieve the greatest good. Think about a country developing. Some politicians argue that development and a strong state is more important, for example, than political rights, because that will achieve the greatest number, and then political rights can be protected later on. So here, the judgment of that statement illustrates a tension between these two ways of thinking. And I recommended at the end of my slides a paper by Toby Ord, where he argues for utilitarianism to maximize health as a moral imperative in global health. And this illustration shows his point. On this x-axis, it shows utility, the gain in health. And on the blue bars are a lot of health interventions. And on the x-axis, it's the cost. So this is a cost-effectiveness illustration. And some interventions, vaccines, for example, can produce a lot of benefit for a small amount of investments, while other interventions, such as dialysis, are very costly and they produce less utility or less health. And Toby Ord argues that if you're really committed to maximize health, you should prioritize those interventions that give the most utility for the investment spent. And this is illustrated, and there is a lot of data now coming up, and you learn more about it in the course. Cost effectiveness analysis is a method to identify interventions that can help you maximize health. So this is from the Disease Control Priorities, 3rd edition, showing cost and effectiveness of a lot of interventions, where interventions to the left are very cost effective, and then you see less and less cost effective interventions. And if a decision maker wants to really maximize health, you should start, or she should start, at the most cost-effective intervention. So this is a link between ethical theory, technical analysis, and maybe influencing policy development, how policymakers often think about priorities in between health interventions. So now I want you to think about this example here. It's a very simple, stylized example. Imagine two groups, group 1 and group 2. Maybe one is poorer than the other, maybe they have a different diagnosis. And you have two interventions and they cost the same, but you can only implement one of them. For group 1, you can add 10 quality adjusted life years by this intervention. So it's a huge improvement for that group. Their life expectancy is about 56. In group 2, the life expectancy is 70, and the other alternative, the other option, is to add 10 life years or quality adjusted life years to this group. And my question to you is, how would a utilitarian choose if you aim to maximize health? And I want you to think about this. Please stop the video and we will return to this example in the next session. Thank you.